Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today, we're going to be exploring something that I think is super relevant to all of us
Yeah.
and could honestly change how we see our day-to-day lives, and that is divine grace.
Mm-hmm.
So we're taking a look at an excerpt from Rhapsody of Realities by Pastor Chris,
Okay.
specifically from April 14th. And it really focuses in on this idea of being, consciously aware of God's abundant grace.
Right.
So that's what we're going to be diving into today. And our goal is to kind of unpack that for you listening. How could this show up in your everyday life, in your everyday experiences?
Yes.
And maybe even spark a few aha moments along the way.
Absolutely. And I think what's so powerful about this concept of abundant grace is that it's not just something we hear about. It's not just like a nice theological idea. It's a tangible force with real world implications.
Yeah.
And I think the source text does a great job of giving us that framework,
Right.
Rooting it in scripture and then showing us how it can actually play out in our lives.
Okay, let's jump into it. So the piece starts by highlighting a verse, Romans 5:17.
Okay.
For if by one man's offense death reigned by one much more, they which receive abundance of grace and of the gift of righteousness shall reign in life by one, Jesus Christ. That phrase, abundance of grace, it really jumps out at you.
Yeah, it does. And I think the emphasis on abundance there is super important.
Yeah.
It's not talking about a limited supply or a tiny stream.
Right.
It's like this overflowing reservoir, and I think the verse is setting up this amazing contrast between the impact of one person's mistake, and then this incredible potential we have to actually thrive, to reign in life through this grace that's so readily available and the gift of righteousness that we receive through Jesus Christ.
And it even says they which receive.
Yes.
It's something that we have a part in.
Right. It's
active.
Yeah.
We have to engage with it.
It's not passive.
Yeah. And that brings us to our next point, which is this idea of being consciously aware of this grace. The text points to 2 Timothy 2.1,
Okay.
where Paul is encouraging Timothy to be strong in the grace that is in Christ Jesus. This feels like more than just a suggestion.
Oh, for sure.
It's almost like an instruction.
Absolutely.
And
the source text really emphasizes that active aspect of it.
Right.
It talks about how Paul is basically saying hey, take advantage of this grace. Now, when we say take advantage, obviously we're not talking about trying to manipulate the system or something.
Right.
It's more about recognizing and utilizing this powerful resource that's already yours. It's there waiting for you to tap into it.
Okay, so how do we practically take advantage of it?
Well, the piece suggests that it starts with being consciously aware of this grace at work within us as we go through our day.
Okay.
So whether you're at work, running errands, interacting with people, whatever it is, the idea is to just be aware that God's grace is active in your life.
So it's almost like a shift in perspective then.
Yeah, it really is.
It's instead of feeling like I'm just doing this on my own.
Yeah. It's recognizing that, wow, there's this constant presence and power of grace that's working in my life.
Right. And that actually brings results.
Well, and that's the thing the text even says. It's not just a passive feeling. This awareness actually brings divine favor that works in your behalf.
Wow.
It positions you for opportunities,
Right.
and it ensures that you stand out. It's imagine a musician who's been playing a piece of music for years, and then suddenly they become aware of this subtle harmony that they never noticed before. That awareness unlocks a whole new level of understanding and expression.
That's a really great analogy. And so it's almost like tuning our senses to recognize this favor and these opportunities.
Exactly, yeah.
But when it claims that being aware can lead to your divine favor, opportunities standing out,
Yeah.
it makes you think what's the mechanism there?
Yeah, well, think about it this way. When you're truly aware of a valuable resource that you possess, you're much more likely to notice and act on situations where you can utilize it.
Okay.
So if you genuinely believe that you're walking in divine favor,
Right.
you might approach challenges with more confidence.
Okay.
You might be open to possibilities that you might have dismissed before. And you might even perceive pathways forward that you wouldn't have even noticed. It's like a shift in your internal landscape that can actually lead to different external outcomes.
That makes a lot of sense. And it's knowing that you have this really great tool, in your toolkit.
Right.
And so you're more likely to reach for it when the situation calls for it.
Absolutely.
Now, the piece takes this interesting turn.
Okay.
It introduces this idea of a reciprocal nature of grace.
Okay.
It says that to experience favor continually we also need to show favor to others.
Right. It's not just a one-way street.
Yeah. It's not just about receiving it.
And I think that's such a crucial point. You know, the text really presents this as a fundamental principle. Receiving grace actually transforms you into someone who then distributes grace.
Wow.
You know, it says a man or woman of favor distributes favor. And in doing so, that favor continually flows back to them. It's almost like a spiritual ecosystem, you know, where generosity and extending kindness actually become essential for experiencing that same divine favor in your own life.
So it's not just about being a recipient.
Right.
It's about being a conduit.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like grace has its own circulation system.
I love that.
Yeah, it's moving through us and then out to others.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah, and then the piece goes on to talk about this idea of covenant kindness.
Okay.
It references Psalm 32.9, which says, "Many sorrows shall be to the wicked, but he that trusteth in the Lord, mercy shall compass him about." And it highlights the fact that the word mercy there comes from the Hebrew word cheesed.
Okay.
Can you kind of unpack that for us?
Yeah. So cheesed is such a rich word in Hebrew. It carries all these layers of meaning. It's often translated as mercy, loving kindness, goodness, and as the text points out, covenant kindness. And it speaks to this deep, unwavering, loyal love, especially within the context of a committed relationship.
Okay.
Like the covenant between God and those who trust in him. So it's not just a fleeting emotion.
Right.
It's this divine favor that's rooted in this unbreakable covenant.
Wow.
You know, something that God remains committed to and cannot turn away from.
Wow.
And it inevitably leads to blessings.
Cannot turn away from.
Yeah.
It just shows how steadfast this is.
It really does.
It's like it goes beyond just like, you know, God being well disposed towards us. It's like a commitment.
It's a deep commitment. Yeah.
Wow. So understanding cheese is covenant kindness.
Yeah.
It really highlights the reliability and that unwavering nature of this divine favor.
It does. It offers this incredible sense of security and assurance.
Yeah.
It's not dependent on us being perfect all the time. You know, it's based on God's faithfulness to this covenant he's made with us.
That can be really grounding.
It is, yeah.
When we're going through challenges or difficulties.
Absolutely.
So with this understanding of abundant grace and covenant kindness, what does the piece say should our response be?
Well, it directs us to another psalm, Psalm 32.11.
Okay.
It says, "Be glad in the Lord and rejoice, ye righteous, and shout for joy, all ye that are upright in heart." And it seems like the natural response to all of this is just joy and gratitude.
Yeah, it's like an outpouring of truly grasping, you know, what we're talking about here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful.
And the text really encourages us to actively express that faith and thankfulness.
Okay.
You know, through gladness, rejoicing, even like shouting for joy.
Yeah.
It's not just like, you know, oh, I feel happy inside.
Right.
It's like, no, express it, let it out.
It's like an active response.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And the piece even gives some practical ideas for this gratitude.
Oh, yeah. Like what it says, you know, like making a point to rejoice in the Lord each day. Setting aside personal moments for like joyful celebration, even declaring things like, I am favored of God, I walk in divine grace, his covenant kindness surrounds me.
Wow.
And it's like, you know, making this understanding a conscious and verbal part of our lives.
Yeah. It's about taking that intellectual understanding
Right.
and allowing it to like really sink in and then bubble up in outward expression.
And these declarations can be powerful.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
they're like affirmations, constantly reminding us, you know, reminding you of that reality.
Yeah, of God's grace and his covenant kindness.
Absolutely.
So to sum it all up,
Okay.
we've explored this idea of abundant grace as like this freely available divine resource.
Right.
We looked at how being consciously aware of this grace in our lives can actually bring favor and open doors to opportunities. We also talked about that reciprocal nature of grace, the principle that extending favor to others often leads to receiving it in return.
And we unpacked that deep missing of covenant kindness, or cheesed, as God's unwavering favor towards us. And then finally, we talked about that suggested response, you know, a joyful and grateful expression of faith.
That's a great summary. I think that really captures the interconnectedness of all these ideas.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just about grasping these concepts in our heads. It's
Right.
about letting them shape how we see our lives,
Right.
how we interact with others, and ultimately how we experience each day.
Yeah, this has been a really insightful deep dive, you know, going beyond just theoretical understanding.
Yeah.
To explore, potential shifts in our actual daily experience.
Yeah.
So here's a final thought for you to really consider.
Okay.
How might intentionally focusing on and acknowledging those little instances of divine favor that we experience throughout our day, the ones that might just go unnoticed, how might that subtly reshape our perspective and the choices that we make? And what wider impact could result from consciously, making an effort to distribute grace in our interactions with everyone around us?
That's a great question to ponder.
It is. It's something worth thinking about.
Absolutely.
So thanks for taking this deep dive with us, and we'll see you next time.
For more information on how you can grow spiritually using Rhapsody of Realities, please visit our website, www.rhapsodyofrealities.org, or you can also visit rin.rhapsodyofrealities.org/salvation. Thank you.